You got exactly 7 days to find $2,000, or this nice little house gonna have a real unfortunate accident. The porch light flickered. 3 silhouettes stood on the concrete steps, backlit by the orange glow of a street lamp halfway down Shelby Drive. Fire spreads fast in these old neighborhoods. The man speaking had gold teeth that caught the light when he smiled. Tattoo on his forearm, 3 letters, Gothic script. His voice carried the casual confidence of someone who had delivered this speech before, someone who had watched houses burn. The woman behind the screen door did not move, did not flinch, did not reach for a phone or a weapon or a neighbor's help. She counted. 3 on the porch, 1 in the idling Dodge Charger at the curb, possibly 1 more in the back seat. The window tint made it impossible to confirm. "I hear you." 3 words, flat, no tremor, no negotiation. The man with the gold teeth tilted his head. That was not the usual response. Usually people begged, cried, promised to find the money somehow. This woman just stood there like she was calculating distance. 7 days. He stepped back, boots heavy on the wooden steps. "Don't make me come back." They retreated to the Charger. Doors slammed. Engine growled. Taillights disappeared around the corner onto Elvis Presley Boulevard. The woman, Simone Garrett, 34 years old, 5'6", 130 pounds, closed the door, turned the deadbolt, then the chain, then stood in the darkness for exactly 90 seconds. Her phone had been recording since the word fire, automatic trigger, voice-activated protocol she had configured 3 weeks ago when she moved in. She opened the encrypted app, typed 4 words, contact initiated, timeline accelerating. Somewhere across Memphis, in a windowless room that did not officially exist, a screen flickered with confirmation. The men in the Charger thought they had just threatened a physical therapist who rented a house she could barely afford. They had just made the worst mistake of their lives. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. 3 weeks earlier, Simone Garrett pulled her 2019 Honda Accord into the driveway of a single-story house on Shelby Drive in Whitehaven, Memphis. The neighborhood sat 14 minutes from naval support activity mid-south, close enough to matter, far enough to avoid suspicion. She had no help moving in, no friends carrying boxes, no family members arguing about where the couch should go. Just her and 6 cardboard boxes labeled in black marker with a system only she understood. Kitchen 1, Kitchen 2, Bedroom Essential, Office Secure. The box marked Office Secure went inside first. She carried it to the small bedroom at the back of the house, the one without windows facing the street, and set it down before returning for the others. The curtains were already drawn. They would stay that way. By the time she finished unloading the 4th box, the neighbor appeared. "Need a hand there, neighbor?" The man walking across the lawn was somewhere around 50, wearing a Ralph Lauren polo shirt that did not match his scuffed Nike sneakers. His smile was wide, too wide, the kind of smile that wanted something. "I got it." Simone lifted another box from the trunk. "Thanks." Malcolm Stroud. He extended a hand she did not take. "Been here 15 years. Like to know who's moving in, you understand? Neighborhood watch and all that. 15 years. Long enough to know every face on the block. Long enough to know who paid and who did not." "Simone, Garrett, you buying or renting?" "Renting, 6-month lease." Malcolm's eyebrows rose slightly. 6 months? That's specific. Most folks sign a year at least. She did not explain, just nodded, turned back to the car, and lifted the last box. When she looked again, Malcolm was still standing there, smile unchanged. "Well?" He shoved his hands in his pockets. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Anything you need, I'm right across the street. Number 47. "Appreciate it." She carried the box inside, closed the door, did not look back. Through the gap in the curtains, she watched Malcolm walk to the Charger idling at the end of the block, lean into the driver's window, and say something that made the driver laugh. First contact. Logged. The next morning, Simone attended her first homeowners association meeting. The invitation had arrived in her mailbox with no stamp and no postmark. Someone had placed it there by hand. The community hall was a converted rec center 3 blocks away. 12 people sat in folding chairs arranged in a semicircle, 11 white, 1 not. The woman at the front of the room was somewhere in her early 60s with platinum hair and a pastel blazer that probably cost more than Simone's monthly rent. Her name was Veronica Ashby. The placard on the table said, HOA President. Ah, our newest resident. Veronica did not stand, did not extend a hand, did not smile. Please, take a seat. We were just discussing community standards. Simone sat in the back row. As I was saying, Veronica continued, we've had some concerns about rental properties attracting transient elements. Nothing personal, of course, just policy discussions. 11 heads nodded in agreement. No one looked at Simone. Everyone was aware of her presence. The meeting lasted 47 minutes. Veronica never asked Simone's name, never welcomed her, never acknowledged her beyond that first dismissive greeting. Our newest resident, like a problem to be managed, not a person to be known. Day 5. Simone began her cover job. Memphis Mobility PT was a small physical therapy clinic in Hickory Hill, 20 minutes from her rental. She worked there as a rehabilitation specialist, focusing on sports injuries and post-surgical recovery. The credentials were real. The degree was real. 7 years of experience before she changed careers. The job gave her a reason to be in Memphis, a reason to have regular hours, a reason to interact with military personnel from the nearby base who needed civilian therapy services. Her coworkers knew her as quiet, punctual, and competent. Patients appreciated that she did not talk more than necessary. No one asked personal questions. No one suspected anything. That Thursday during her lunch break, her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. The message was brief. This is a courtesy call from Whitehaven Community Services. We've noticed your property hasn't registered with our Neighborhood Watch program. Registration is strongly encouraged. Someone will follow up in person. Simone replayed the message twice. Then she searched for Whitehaven Community Services in every database she could access. Public records, business registrations, nonprofit filings. Nothing. The organization did not exist. She traced the phone number to a prepaid burner purchased with cash at a Walgreens on Elvis Presley Boulevard. The transaction had occurred 11 days before her arrival. They had been expecting her, or expecting someone. The first encounter with Dante Mercer happened at a MAPCO gas station on Brooks Road. Simone was filling her tank when the black Dodge Charger pulled into the adjacent pump. 22-inch rims, bass heavy enough to rattle the windows of the convenience store. The same car she had seen Malcolm talking to on her first day. The driver stepped out. 6'2", maybe 220, 230 pounds. Muscle built for intimidation rather than function. Tank top, despite the March chill. Tattoo on his right forearm. 3 letters in Gothic script. SMM, South Memphis, Mafia. You the new girl on Shelby. Not a question, a confirmation. Simone did not stop pumping gas. Can I help you? Nah. He smiled, gold teeth glinting. Just saying hi. Neighborhood's got a system, keeps things peaceful. You'll hear about it soon enough. He did not touch her, did not step closer, did not need to. The message was in his posture, the way he looked at her like she was already owned. I'll keep that in mind. She finished pumping, replaced the nozzle, got in her car, drove away. In the rearview mirror, he stood watching until she turned the corner. It was day 12. The evening everything changed. Simone had just returned from work when she saw Malcolm Stroud waving from the sidewalk. His smile was as wide as ever. Hey, Simone, got a minute? Some of the guys want to talk. The guys were 3 men sitting on Malcolm's porch. 2 she recognized from the night before, the ones who had delivered the initial threat. The third was new, taller, thinner, wearing sunglasses despite the fading daylight. Simone parked in her garage but did not go inside. Instead, she walked directly toward them. Better to meet them in neutral space than let them approach her territory. The man in sunglasses stood. His movements were smooth, controlled, not the aggressive posturing of a street enforcer. This was someone with education, someone who had read books about negotiation and power dynamics. Miss Garrett, his voice was soft, almost friendly. Heard you're settling in. And you are? Keenan Blackwell. I keep the peace around here. He extended his hand. She did not take it. This neighborhood runs smooth, he continued unfazed, because people understand the value of community investment. $2,000 a month. cash, 1st and 15th. In return, nothing bad happens. No break-ins, no fires, no problems with the police. And if I decline? Keenan's smile did not waver. Nobody declines. Simone let the silence stretch. 3 seconds, 4, 5. I need to review the terms. Standard protocol. The word hung in the air. Protocol. It was not a word civilians used in this context. Keenan noticed. His eyes narrowed slightly, trying to place her, trying to understand why she was not afraid. 7 days, he gestured to Malcolm. He'll collect. We're reasonable people, Miss Garrett. Don't make us unreasonable. They left in the Charger. Simone stood on the sidewalk until the taillights disappeared. Then she went inside and called 911. The dispatcher answered on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency? I'd like to report an extortion threat. A group of men just demanded $2,000 monthly for protection. They threatened to burn my house down. Ma'am, are you in immediate danger? Not at this moment. I'm dispatching a unit. Can you provide your address? Simone gave the address. The dispatcher read it back, then added something that made Simone's jaw tighten. Estimated response time is 35 minutes. Please stay inside with the doors locked. 35 minutes for an extortion call. Understood. She hung up, checked her personal recording app. The entire exchange with Keenan Blackwell was captured, time-stamped, location tagged, backed up to a secure server she controlled. 47 minutes later, a single patrol car pulled up. The officer who emerged was young, probably late 20s. With a bored expression and a notepad, she clearly had no intention of filling. Her nameplate read, Reeves. You called about a threat? Extortion. A group demanded $2,000 monthly for protection. I have audio. Officer Reeves did not ask to hear the audio, did not ask for descriptions, did not ask for license plate numbers or names. Ma'am, these neighborhood disputes can be tricky. She clicked her pen, wrote something brief. Sometimes it's best to just keep your head down. Keep my head down. You know, don't make waves. Things have a way of working themselves out. Simone stared at her. That's your official advice on an extortion complaint? I'm just saying, we can't be out here every time someone has a disagreement about money. Reeves tucked her notepad away. We'll look into it. Don't hold your breath. She drove away without taking a statement, without asking to see the audio, without doing anything that might constitute actual police work. Simone stood in her doorway and watched the patrol car disappear. The system was not going to help her. She had expected that. The next morning, Simone went to Rains Station, the local precinct, and requested to speak with a supervisor. The desk sergeant made her wait 40 minutes. Captain Lucas Pemberton was 57 years old, with a gut that strained his uniform buttons and coffee stains on his desk that looked weeks old. He did not invite her to sit. So, you're telling me Keenan Blackwell personally threatened you? Yes, that's a serious accusation. I have audio evidence, timestamps, a witness. Malcolm Stroud was present. Pemberton leaned back. Malcolm Stroud, pillar of the community, serves on the neighborhood watch. You sure you're not misunderstanding something? I'm not misunderstanding an explicit demand for $2,000 monthly with threats of arson if I refuse. Look, Miss... He glanced at his notes. Garrett, you just moved here. Things work differently in this part of town. Sometimes people ask for contributions to community funds. It's not extortion, it's civic engagement. $2,000 a month is not a contribution. It's a felony under Tennessee Code, Section 39-14-112. The words landed like a slap. Pemberton stopped moving. For the first time, he actually looked at her, not through her, at her. You a lawyer? Physical therapist. Uh-huh. He did not believe her, but he also did not want to find out why a physical therapist could cite criminal statutes from memory. I'll have someone follow up. He stood, signaling the meeting was over. Don't hold your breath. The same words Officer Reeves had used, almost verbatim. Simone left the station knowing two things with absolute certainty. 1. The police in this district were either complicit or compromised. 2. She was exactly where she needed to be. If this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, Make sure to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Day 14. The letter from the HOA arrived in her mailbox. Crisp white envelope, no stamp, hand-delivered like the meeting invitation. She opened it standing in her driveway. Whitehaven Community Association. Notice of violation. Property, Shelby Drive. Date, March 17th, 2024. Nature of violations. 1. Unauthorized exterior modifications. 2. Failure to maintain lawn to community standards. 3. Noise complaints, unverified. Fine, $500. Due within 14 days. Failure to comply may result in lien on property and legal action. Simone read it twice, then walked her entire property, taking photos with timestamps. The exterior was untouched. She had not added so much as a doormat. The lawn was cut every Saturday at precisely 8 a.m., cleaner than most yards on the block. She had hosted no parties, played no music, had no visitors. The complaints were fabricated. The signatures at the bottom, 3 neighbors she had never met, were almost certainly forged. Veronica Ashby's name was not on the letter, but the return address was the HOA office, the one Veronica ran. The social war had begun. Thus, 2 days later, the workplace attack came. Simone arrived at the clinic to find Dr. Marcus Webb waiting in his office doorway, with an expression that suggested he had drawn the short straw on an unpleasant task. "Simone, we need to talk." His office was small, cluttered with medical journals and framed certifications. He closed the door behind her. "We have received a complaint, anonymous, about your conduct with patients." "What specifically?" "It's vague. Something about inappropriate interactions. No names, no dates, just concerns." Concerns. The word system used to destroy careers without evidence. "I have a right to know the specific allegations." "That's not how this works. The board wants you on administrative leave pending investigation." "For how long?" "Undetermined. Could be a few days. Could be longer." Simone did not raise her voice, did not threaten legal action, did not cry. "I'll need that in writing, with the specific allegations listed and the names of board members who voted on this decision." Webb blinked. "That's not standard procedure. It is under Tennessee Code, annotated section 63-1-117, Healthcare Worker Due Process." His mouth opened, closed, opened again. I'll see what I can do." She left the clinic knowing she would not be back for a while, knowing that Malcolm Stroud had a brother-in-law who worked in the Memphis healthcare system, knowing that one phone call was all it had taken. The isolation intensified over the following week. Neighbors who had previously nodded in passing now turned their heads. Mail arrived 2-3 days late, mysteriously rerouted or delivered to wrong addresses. Garbage collection skipped her house twice despite her bins being at the curb on time. Small harassments, individually meaningless, collectively crushing. Simone documented everything: dates, times, incidents, building a pattern that would eventually tell a story. She had done this before, in other cities, under other names, watching systems reveal themselves through their petty cruelties. The difference now was that she had audio. She had video. She had a server full of encrypted evidence that no one knew existed. And she had patients that had been forged in places much worse than a Memphis suburb. Day 18. The new patient arrived. His name was Technical Sergeant Garrett Voss, 35 years old, logistics NCO from Naval Support Activity Mid-South, shoulder injury from a training accident. At least, that was what the intake form said. Simone had flagged his name 3 months ago during preliminary research. Voss had access to weapons inventory systems at the base. His financial records, obtained through federal channels she was not supposed to discuss, showed unexplained income that coincided precisely with reported thefts from military armories. He was why she was here. "Let's start with range of motion," she said during their first session, guiding his arm through a series of movements. "Tell me if anything feels uncomfortable." Voss watched her hands with unusual attention, not the way patients usually did, more like he was assessing her competence, her training. "You're good." His voice was casual, but his eyes were calculating, very precise. "Military background?" "No." "Funny, you move like you've had training." She did not respond, just continued the exercises, noting how he favored his left side, despite claiming the injury was on the right. Session 2 was more pointed. Your documentation is thorough. Voss flipped through the papers she had given him. HIPAA level careful. Most private clinics aren't this meticulous. Standard protocol. There's that word again. He set the papers down. Protocol. You use it a lot for a civilian. She met his eyes, held the contact for exactly 2 seconds. It's just how I work, he smiled, the smile of someone who had just filed away information for later use. Day 21. The financial pressure arrived. No paycheck from the clinic. HOA fine still unpaid. Rent due in 10 days. For anyone else, the combination would be devastating. The kind of squeeze that forced compliance. Simone had savings. More than a physical therapist should reasonably have. But no one knew that. To the outside world, she was drowning. Malcolm Stroud stopped by that evening with a casserole and a sympathetic smile. Heard you're having some trouble at work. She stood in the doorway, not inviting him in. Word travels fast. Small neighborhood, people talk. He held out the dish. Thought you might need a home-cooked meal. Times being what they are. That's kind, but I'm fine. His smile flickered, just for a moment, the kind of tell that confirmed what she already knew. You know, Simone, there's no shame in asking for help. Keenan's offer still stands. $2,000 a month is nothing compared to what you'd lose if things got really bad. Things like what? Oh, you know, he shrugged. Houses get broken into, cars get keyed, people lose jobs for no good reason. His eyes met hers. Bad things happen to people who don't have friends in the neighborhood. She took the casserole, smiled. Thanks for the warning, Malcolm. I'll keep that in mind. She closed the door, set the dish on the counter, did not eat it. That night, she photographed it, logged the interaction, and added Malcolm Stroud to the evidence file under the heading Conspiracy to Extort. Day 25. 6 a.m. Simone was in the shower when the pounding started. 3 sharp knocks, pause, 3 more. The rhythm of authority announcing itself. She wrapped a towel around herself, grabbed her phone, and approached the front door. Through the peephole, 2 uniformed officers. The one in front had his hand resting on his belt near his weapon. She activated her recording app, then opened the door. Memphis PD. We received a complaint about suspicious activity at this address. The officer speaking was white, mid-30s, with the bored aggression of someone who resented being awake this early. His nameplate read, Nash. What kind of activity? Anonymous tip. Someone reported seeing drug paraphernalia through your window. Simone glanced at the windows. Every curtain was drawn. Had been since day 1. The curtains are closed. That's what they said. Nash shrugged. Mind if we take a look inside? Do you have a warrant? His expression hardened. Ma'am, we're just trying to verify the complaint. If you've got nothing to hide, I don't consent to a search. If you have probable cause, get a warrant. Nash exchanged a look with his partner. The partner, younger, clearly uncomfortable, shifted his weight and looked at the ground. Fine. Nash pulled out his notepad, started writing. Subject refused consent search. Suspicious behavior noted. Will be in touch. They left. Simone watched them drive away, then checked her phone. Recording captured, time-stamped, backed up. Suspicious behavior noted. The language of building probable cause. They were constructing a paper trail, one that could justify a forced entry later. She had maybe a week before they tried again. That afternoon, she received the civil summons, Shelby County General Sessions, Court Case Number 2, 4-G S-1847, Whitehaven Community Association versus Simone Garrett. Nature of complaint, breach of HO, A covenant, nuisance, failure to pay, assessed fines, damages sought, $2,500 plus attorney fees plus injunctive relief. Injunctive relief, legal language for eviction. They were using the court system to force her out. No violence necessary, just paperwork. Simone sat at her kitchen table with the summons and a legal pad. She had 21 days to respond. She started writing. The motion to dismiss took her 3 hours. Not because she did not know what to write, because she had to make it look like the work of a desperate civilian who had spent nights researching online, not someone with access to federal legal databases. She cited 5 Tennessee precedents on HOA overreach, challenged every count for lack of specificity, requested sanctions for frivolous filing. The clerk at the courthouse accepted her filing with raised eyebrows. "You do this yourself? I had some time." 2 weeks later, she stood before Judge Evelyn Moss in a courtroom that smelled like old wood and institutional coffee. The HOA attorney, a man named Bledsoe who had clearly expected this to be an uncontested default judgment, stumbled through his opening statement. Judge Moss was not impressed. "Counsel, your client's complaint lacks specificity on every count." She held up the filing. "Where are the photographs of these alleged violations? Where are the signed statements from neighbors? Your Honor, you're prepared to waste this court's time." She set the papers down. Motion to dismiss granted. Plaintiff to pay defendant's filing fees. Next case. Simone did not smile, did not celebrate, just gathered her papers and walked out. In the back row, Veronica Ashby sat with her face flushed red, her hands gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Cast. That night, the text message arrived. Unknown number, burner phone, courts close, we don't. Simone read it once, saved a screenshot, added it to the evidence file. They were done with paperwork. The next phase would be physical. She was ready. Day 30, the night they came for her, 9:47 p.m. Simone was pulling into her garage when she noticed the shapes in the darkness. 2 men, already inside, waiting, Dante Mercer, gold teeth catching the dim light, and another one, smaller, faster, with a knife in his hand. "King says you got one more chance." Dante stepped forward, blocking the path to the interior door. "Pay double now, 4,000, or we leave a message your neighbors won't forget." The smaller one circled to her left. Flanking position. Amateur formation, but effective in a confined space, Simone calculated. 2 against 1. Closed environment, her back to the car, the garage door motor still running. "I don't have 4,000. Then I guess we got a problem." The one with the knife moved first, lunging. Blade aimed at her midsection. Wrong choice. Simone pivoted. Her hand caught his wrist at the apex of the thrust, redirecting the momentum. Her other hand struck the inside of his elbow, not hard enough to break, but enough to hyperextend. The knife clattered to the concrete. She used his off-balance stumble to drive him sideways. His head connected with the garage wall. He went down and did not get up. Dante stood frozen. His mouth was open. "You have 5 seconds to leave." Simone's voice was flat, calm. "I won't be this patient twice." "Who the hell are you?" 4. He grabbed his partner by the collar and dragged him toward the side door. They disappeared into the darkness. Simone stood alone in her garage. Her heart rate was elevated slightly, 72 beats per minute. She waited until it dropped to 65 before moving. Then she called 911. The dispatcher answered on the first ring this time. 911, what's your emergency?" "Home invasion, 2 armed intruders in my garage. I defended myself. One has a minor head injury. They fled on foot." "Are you injured?" "No." "Officers are being dispatched. Estimated response time." The dispatcher paused. 49 minutes. 49 minutes for a home invasion with an injured suspect. Understood. The same patrol car arrived, different officers. But standing behind them, stepping out of an unmarked vehicle, was Captain Lucas Pemberton. He looked at the blood on her garage floor, looked at the knife she had placed on a clean towel, untouched since it fell, looked at her. "You assaulted someone, Miss Garrett." "I defended myself in my own home against armed intruders." "That's your story." Pemberton stepped closer. "Their story might be different. Their story will include unlawful entry under Tennessee Code, Section 39-14-404, and assault with a deadly weapon under Section 39-13-102, both felonies." "There you go again." His voice dropped. "Citing codes like you're a lawyer. You're not. And around here, that kind of attitude gets people killed." She met his eyes without blinking. "Is that a threat, Captain?" "It's advice." He smiled, the kind of smile that carried no warmth. "Take it." They left without taking her statement, without photographing the scene, without collecting the knife as evidence. Simone waited until the last car was gone. Then she photographed everything herself: the blood, the knife, the scrapes on the garage wall. She uploaded it all to the secure server. The surveillance began the next day. Every night from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m., a patrol car parked at the end of Shelby Drive with a clear view of her house. Same car each time, Unit 47. No officers ever exited. They just sat there, watching. The neighbors noticed, started whispering. What did she do? Must be something serious if the police are watching her. Better keep your distance. The isolation tightened, the pressure increased, and still Simone did not break. Day 35, the evidence plant. She knew something was wrong before she opened the back door. The frame was splintered near the lock. Someone had pried it open with a crowbar or a flathead screwdriver. Inside, the house looked untouched. Nothing missing, nothing obviously disturbed, except for the small plastic bag sitting on her kitchen table. White powder, maybe 2 grams. Placed carefully in the center, directly under the overhead light. Staged. Simone did not touch it, did not go near it. She took photos from the doorway, documented the broken door frame, the placement of the bag, the absence of any other disturbance. Then she called a number that was not 911. Asset compromised, evidence plant detected, requesting authorization for Phase 2. The voice on the other end was female, calm, professional. Authorization granted, SOG on standby. What's your timeline? 72 hours. I need them to commit to the weapons transfer first. Understood. Stay safe, Warrant. The call ended. Simone looked at the bag of powder on her table, at the broken door, at the trap they were trying to set. Then she carefully sealed the evidence in her own container, photographed the chain of custody, and waited. We're about to reach a major turning point. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. You don't want to miss what's coming. Day 37. The anonymous package arrived. No return address. Mailed from a P.O. box she had established 3 years ago, under a name no one in Memphis knew. Inside, a USB drive and a single sheet of paper. Thought you should see this. Some of us still believe in the job. A friend? The USB contained body cam footage. Officer Derek Nash, March 25th. The morning he had arrived at her door looking for drugs. Simone plugged it into her secure laptop and watched. The timestamp read 062814. Nash was speaking into his radio. Approaching target residence, confirming visual for Captain. Copy, Unit 47, Captain Pemberton advised. Target residence. Not responding to complaint, not conducting welfare check. Target. The footage continued. Nash exited his vehicle. His partner's voice came through, off radio. This is garbage. She didn't do anything. Orders are orders. Make the report. Go home. Simone played it again, 3 times, then saved it to her encrypted archive. She had suspected the harassment was coordinated. Now she had proof. And she had a friend inside the department. Day 39. The clinic called, not Dr. Webb, the board chairman directly. His voice carried the careful neutrality of someone delivering bad news they did not personally believe. Ms. Garrett, after reviewing the complaint, we've determined that there's insufficient evidence to support the allegations against you. So I'm cleared. You're cleared, and frankly, we owe you an apology. The complaint was unusual, anonymous, no specifics. The board member who pushed hardest for your suspension resigned yesterday. Which board member? That's confidential, but I can tell you he has personal connections to people in your neighborhood. Draw your own conclusions. She could return to work immediately. Full back pay. No mark on her record. Simone thanked him and hung up. Then she did something she had not done in 3 weeks. She smiled. The pressure campaign was failing. They had tried social isolation, workplace destruction, police harassment, legal threats, and evidence planting. None of it had broken her. Now they would escalate. And when they did, she would be ready. At day 40, the parallel investigation emerged. Simone received the message during her lunch break. Secure app, priority alert. New intel on Voss, shipment confirmed, April 5th, 2100 hours. Location, Bravo, need to meet. Thornton. She did not recognize the name, but she recognized the authentication code embedded in the message footer. NCIS, Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Someone else had been watching Garrett Voss. The meeting took place in the parking lot of Wolfchase Galleria. Public space, multiple exits, security cameras that would show nothing unusual about two people having a conversation near their cars. Marcus Thornton was approximately 40 years old, with the face of an accountant and the eyes of someone who had seen things that would not fit in any spreadsheet. NCIS badge clipped to his belt, visible but not ostentatious. Special Agent Thornton. He did not offer to shake hands. I know who you are. AFOS. I reached out last week. Then you know I can't confirm anything. You don't need to. We've been watching Voss for 8 months. Same target, different angle. He handed her a folder. Email intercepts. He's moving weapons from naval support activity to a local gang. 24 M4 carbines, 12 M17 sidearms, 4,000 rounds. April 5th. Warehouse on President's Island. Simone opened the folder, scanned the contents. The email headers showed a sender from a Navy.mil domain. The recipient was a Proton Mail account that NCIS had linked to shell companies in the Cayman Islands. The same shell companies that appeared in Keenan Blackwell's financial records. You want to be there, she said. I need to be there, but I can't get close without burning my source. You're already inside. Voss is your patient. What are you asking? Wear a wire. Get him to confirm his involvement. We make the bus together. Joint operation. Shared credit. Simone closed the folder. I need authorization from my chain. Already granted. Thornton smiled for the first time. Colonel Reyes signed off this morning. You've got green light. Day 42. Malcolm Stroud made his final mistake. Simone was checking her mail when he approached, that same practiced smile stretching his face. Hey, neighbor, just checking in. Heard you had some trouble with the police the other night. She straightened slowly. Where did you hear that? Oh, you know, word gets around. Word did not get around. Not in 2 days, not from legitimate sources. Malcolm, she stepped closer. When's the last time you talked to Keenan Blackwell? The smile died. I don't know who. You do? And soon, everyone else will too. She walked inside, closed the door. Through the window, she watched Malcolm stand frozen for almost a full minute. Then he turned and walked, nearly ran, back to his house. Day 44. Final session with Garrett Voss. Simone arrived at the clinic wearing a lapel pin that was slightly larger than usual. No one noticed. Why would they? It matched her professional attire perfectly. The transmitter was active, signal encrypted. The mobile command center was parked 2 blocks away. Voss arrived on time. His shoulder was healing well, or would have been if the injury had been genuine. How's the mobility today? She asked, guiding his arm through a rotation. Better. Your methods are effective. He watched her hands. Military grade, I'd say. I learned from good teachers. He nodded slowly. You know, I've been thinking, someone with your skills could make a lot more money. Freelance consulting. I know people who pay well for specialized services. What kind of services? Logistics. He leaned closer. His voice dropped. Moving things from point A to point B without paperwork. Tonight, for instance. I've got a shipment that needs handling. Interested? The wire captured every word. What kind of shipment? Military hardware. Nothing you haven't seen before, I'm guessing. His smile widened. M4S, sidearms, buyers already lined up. All I need is someone who can keep their mouth shut and move clean. Simone pretended to consider. Where and when? President's Island, 9 p.m. I'll text you the exact address. Bring whatever you need to feel comfortable. It's not a combat zone, just business. I'll be there. Voss smiled like he had just won a prize. He had no idea what was coming. April 5th, the night everything ended, 9 p.m. President's Island. The warehouse sat on the industrial strip near the Mississippi River. Chain-link fence, single-access road, floodlights that illuminated the loading dock and left everything else in shadow. Simone parked beside Voss's truck. He was already there, leaning against the hood like this was a casual Friday night. Glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it. Inside the warehouse, Keenan Blackwell, Dante Mercer, 3 other enforcers Simone did not recognize, and wooden crates stacked on pallets, military shipping containers with serial numbers stenciled on the sides, 24 M4A1 carbines, 12 M17 sidearms, 4,000 rounds of ammunition, all of it stolen from naval support activity mid-south. Keenan noticed her immediately. Wait, his eyes narrowed. You're the woman from Shelby Drive, the one who wouldn't pay. Small world. You got nerve showing your face here. Simone stepped forward, hands visible, posture relaxed. I like to know who I'm working for. Call it due diligence. Dante shifted his weight. His hand moved toward his waistband. King, something ain't right. She should be scared. Keenan studied her. The calmness, the confidence, the way she stood like she owned the room. Demo's right. Who are you really? Simone touched her lapel pin, a single tap. The warehouse doors exploded inward. 8 figures in black tactical gear, night vision goggles, suppressed weapons. They moved like shadows given form. On the ground, hands visible, now! Dante went for his gun. One of the operators closed the distance in 3 steps. A controlled strike to the wrist. The weapon clattered away. A second strike put Dante on his knees. Keenan did not move. He stood perfectly still, watching Simone with something between fury and disbelief. Who the hell? Keenan Blackwell. Simone's voice cut through the chaos. Garrett Voss, Dante Mercer. You're under arrest for conspiracy to traffic stolen military weapons under 18 U.S.C. Section 922, theft of government property under 18 U.S.C. Section 641, and violations of the Arms Export Control Act. She pulled her credentials from inside her jacket. The badge caught the floodlights. Special Agent Simone Garrett, Air Force Office of Special Investigations. Keenan's face went white. Voss dropped to his knees without being told. Dante, still held in an arm lock by an operator twice his size, just whispered, "You gotta be kidding me." The arrests took 22 minutes. Each suspect was zip-tied, searched, and read their rights. The weapons crates were photographed, inventoried, and tagged for transport. Chain of custody documentation began immediately. Agent Thornton arrived with the NCIS team as the final suspect was being loaded into a transport van. Clean operation? He nodded at Simone. Your wire got everything. Voss incriminated himself 6 ways from Sunday. What about Blackwell? Conspiracy charges alone will put him away for 15 to 20, plus state charges for the extortion scheme, plus whatever else we find when we tear apart his network. Simone watched the van doors close. Keenan Blackwell stared at her through the tiny window. His expression had shifted from shock to cold, calculating fury. He was going to prison, but he was not going to forget who put him there. And Pemberton? She asked. Thornton's smile faded. Different jurisdiction, but I made some calls. Internal Affairs is opening a file. FBI Civil Rights Division is interested. He's not walking away clean. Simone nodded. That would have to be enough for now. Midnight. Rains Station. Simone walked through the front doors without hesitation. Her credentials were visible. Her posture was different. Shoulders back, stride confident, every movement signaling authority. Captain Pemberton was in the lobby, speaking with a detective whose expression suggested he wanted to be anywhere else. He looked up when she entered. Recognition was slow, then fast, then horrified. You, Captain Pemberton. Simone stopped 3 feet away. We need to talk about your department's relationship with Keenan Blackwell. I don't know what your 14 phone calls between your personal cell and Malcolm Stroud in the past 6 weeks. Stroud works as a spotter for Blackwell's organization. Your officers conducted surveillance on my residence without documented authorization, and somehow every complaint I filed ended up buried in administrative limbo. She held up her phone. I have body cam footage of Officer Nash calling my home a target residence, while confirming he was operating under your orders. Pemberton's face had gone gray. You can't prove? I don't need to prove anything tonight. That's what discovery is for. She stepped closer. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to place yourself on administrative leave pending investigation. You're going to cooperate fully with internal affairs. And you're going to pray that your union lawyer is very, very good. Because if I find evidence that you knew about the weapons trafficking, if I find one phone call, one email, one witness who puts you in that loop, I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your career in a federal prison cell. Pemberton opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out. Simone turned and walked out. 3 a.m. The drive back to Shelby Drive. The house looked exactly as she had left it, dark, quiet. The patrol car that had been watching her for weeks was conspicuously absent. She parked in the garage, locked the door, stood in the silence. Her phone buzzed. Encrypted app. Phase 2. Complete. Targets in custody. SOG exfil confirmed. Stand by for debrief. She typed a response. Copy. Warrant out. Then she sat down on her couch. In the house she had rented as a cover, in the neighborhood that had tried to destroy her, in the city that had thrown everything it had at a woman who refused to break. And for the first time in 44 days, Simone Garrett closed her eyes without listening for footsteps. But across town, in an interrogation room at the FBI field office, Keenan Blackwell was whispering something to his lawyer, and on the encrypted server Simone had built, a single file remained flagged, an email, partial, redacted. LM confirms next shipment, different route, less exposure. He'll contact you directly. LM initials she had not yet identified. A player she had not yet found, someone higher than Voss, higher than Blackwell, someone who was still out there. The trap had closed, the arrests were made, the weapons recovered, but the network was not dead, and somewhere, someone was already planning what came next. End of part 1. The interrogation room at the FBI field office smelled like burnt coffee and institutional desperation. Keenan Blackwell sat behind the metal table with his hands cuffed to a steel ring, his lawyer beside him reviewing documents that would not save either of them. Across the table, Special Agent Simone Garrett waited. My client is prepared to cooperate. The lawyer, a man named Whitfield who charged $400 an hour, spoke without looking up. In exchange for consideration on sentencing. Cooperation means names, routes, contacts. Simone leaned forward slightly, starting with LM. Blackwell's expression flickered, just for a moment. Then the mask returned. I don't know what you're talking about. The emails say otherwise. LM confirms next shipment, different route, less exposure. Your associate Voss received that message 3 weeks before the transfer. She slid a printout across the table. Who is LM? Blackwell stared at the paper. His jaw tightened. I want full immunity. You're facing 25 to life on federal weapons charges. Immunity isn't on the table. Then I want a new lawyer. Whitfield looked up, startled. Keenan, shut up. Blackwell's voice was ice. You're fired. Get out. The lawyer gathered his papers and left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him. Blackwell leaned back in his chair. The cuffs clinked against the table ring. You think you won something tonight. His voice was low now, conversational. You didn't. You caught the delivery boys, the drivers, the middle management. He smiled, gold teeth glinting under the fluorescent lights. The people who matter? They're watching this right now, and they're already planning what happens next. Who are they? You want LM? Fine, I'll give you LM, but not here, not on tape. He nodded toward the camera in the corner. Turn that off, then we'll talk. Simone did not move. The camera stays on. Then we're done. Blackwell closed his eyes. Take me back to holding. I need my sleep. 3 days after the arrests, the first counterattack came. Simone was at the FBI field office reviewing evidence files when Agent Thornton appeared in the doorway with an expression that suggested bad news. We have a problem. The problem was Captain Lucas Pemberton. Instead of going quietly on administrative leave, he had hired a lawyer, a former federal prosecutor named Camille Maddox, who specialized in defending law enforcement officers against civil rights allegations. The press conference was already underway by the time Simone reached a television. My client is the victim of a coordinated smear campaign. Maddox stood behind a podium bristling with microphones, her silver hair immaculate, her voice carrying the practiced outrage of someone who had delivered these speeches before. Federal agents embedded themselves in his jurisdiction without notification. They manufactured evidence. They entrapped local citizens. And now they're trying to destroy the career of a 25-year veteran because he asked uncomfortable questions. A reporter's voice. What about the allegations of coordination with organized crime? Baseless. Captain Pemberton has never met Keenan Blackwell. He has never communicated with any member of the so-called South Memphis Mafia. The phone records allegedly linking him to Malcolm Stroud are incomplete and taken out of context. Another reporter, Agent Garrett, claims she has body cam footage. Agent Garrett? Maddox smiled thinly. A woman who spent 6 weeks pretending to be someone she wasn't, lying to neighbors, lying to coworkers, lying to local law enforcement. And we're supposed to trust her interpretation of evidence? She leaned into the microphones. The Memphis Police Department will conduct its own investigation. And when the truth comes out, it will be Agent Garrett facing questions about her conduct, not Captain Pemberton. The television cut to commercial. Thornton muted it. She's good. She's desperate. Simone kept her voice level. Pemberton knows what we have. This is damage control. Maybe. But damage control works. Public opinion is already shifting. Local news is running her sound bites every hour. The union issued a statement calling the investigation a federal overreach. He rubbed his forehead. We need to move faster before they bury this in procedure. The internal affairs hearing was scheduled for April 28th, 3 weeks after the arrests. In the interim, the investigation expanded. Malcolm Stroud was arrested on April 8th at his home on Shelby Drive. The charges: conspiracy to commit extortion, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. His bail was set at $50,000. His wife posted it within 6 hours. Simone watched the arrest from across the street, sitting in an unmarked vehicle with Agent Thornton. 15 years? Thornton shook his head as officers led Stroud to the patrol car. 15 years living next to people he was helping extort, smiling at them, bringing casseroles, reporting everything back to Blackwell. That's how networks survive. Simone did not look away from Stroud's face, the way his eyes scanned the gathered neighbors, calculating who might testify against him. You don't build them with strangers. You build them with people who already belong. Stroud's gaze found the unmarked car, found her. His expression did not change, but his lips moved, forming words she could read even at this distance. This isn't over. She held his stare until the patrol car door closed. If you're still with us, hit that subscribe button right now. The courtroom battle is about to begin, and you don't want to miss a second. April 12th. The federal grand jury convened. Simone testified for 4 hours. She walked them through everything: the initial contact, the threats, the escalating harassment, the weapons transfer, the arrests. She presented audio recordings, video evidence, financial documents, and communication intercepts. The grand jury returned indictments against Keenan Blackwell, Garrett Voss, Dante Mercer, and 2 other participants in the warehouse operation. Blackwell: conspiracy to traffic stolen military weapons, theft of government property, violations of the Arms Export Control Act, racketeering, extortion. Voss: all of the above plus violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. His case would be handled by court-martial. Mercer: reduced charges in exchange for cooperation. He had begun providing information about the network's operations, names, routes, drop points. But he claimed he did not know LM. Voss handled that side, Mercer said during his first proffer session. Whatever came from the base, whatever went to the buyers, Voss set it up. He never told us where the orders came from, just said he had a contact, someone high up. High up where? The base? The gang? I don't know. Mercer's leg bounced with nervous energy. All I know is, when Voss talked about this contact, he got scared. Like, actually scared. And Voss don't scare easy. April 15th. The first physical confrontation since the arrests. Simone was leaving the federal building at 6:43 p.m. when she noticed the vehicle. Black SUV, tinted windows. Tennessee plates that did not match any vehicle in the investigation database. It had been parked in the same spot for 3 hours. She walked to her car without changing pace, unlocked it, got inside. The SUV pulled out of its space and fell in behind her. Simone drove at normal speed, maintained regular intervals at traffic lights, gave no indication she had noticed the tail. The SUV stayed with her for 6 blocks. Then it accelerated. It pulled alongside her at a red light. The passenger window lowered. The face behind it belonged to a man she did not recognize. White, mid-40s, military haircut, no visible tattoos or distinguishing marks. His expression was neutral. "Agent Garrett." She did not respond. "You should let this go. Walk away. Take a transfer to another field office. There's still time." Time for what? Time to make the right choice. His eyes were flat, emotionless. Some investigations are too big to finish. Some networks are too connected to bring down. You think you caught the whole operation? You caught the bottom rung. The people who matter are still out there. And they're not happy. The light turned green. Simone did not move. The car behind her honked. "You have 48 hours to reconsider." The man smiled without warmth. "After that, we stop asking nicely." The SUV accelerated through the intersection and disappeared. Simone sat for another 3 seconds. Then she drove, not to her temporary quarters, but to the FBI field office. She had the license plate, she had facial recognition software, and she had 48 hours to find out who was threatening a federal agent in broad daylight. The plates came back stolen. The facial recognition returned no matches in any civilian database. But the military database was different. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Lawson, Logistics Command, Fort Campbell, Kentucky. 22 years of service, spotless record. Simone stared at the photograph on her screen. Same face, same haircut, same flat eyes. L.M. Marcus Lawson. The contact Voss had been too scared to name. She brought the information to Colonel Diana Reyes at AFOSI headquarters via encrypted video conference. Lawson has connections across 6 military installations. Reyes reviewed the file in real time, her expression growing darker with each page. Logistics oversight for weapons distribution throughout the Southeast region. If he's the source, then the theft operation is bigger than Memphis, bigger than Voss. It's systemic. Reyes set down the file. "We need to loop in Army CID. This is their jurisdiction now." "With respect, Colonel, Army CID might be compromised. Lawson has been in Logistics Command for 11 years. If he's running a distribution network, he's had time to build relationships, plant allies. We don't know who we can trust." Reyes was silent for a long moment. "What are you proposing?" "Let me run him down. Off the books. I'll coordinate with NCIS. Thornton's already read in. We build the case quietly. No notifications to other agencies until we have enough evidence to move. That's a career risk for both of us. The alternative is tipping him off and watching him disappear." Simone leaned forward. "He approached me directly, Colonel. He knows I'm onto something. He's scared enough to make threats. That means we're close." Reyes considered. Her jaw tightened. 48 hours. That's what he gave you. That's what I'm giving you. After that, I'm obligated to report up the chain." She paused. "And Simone, if he makes another approach, you don't engage alone. Understood?" "Understood." April 17th. The 48-hour deadline. Simone spent the first 24 hours building a timeline. Lawson's travel records. His communications, at least the ones she could access through legal channels. His financial history. The pattern emerged slowly. Every 6 months, Lawson visited Memphis on inspection tours. Every visit coincided with a spike in weapons theft reports from naval support activity mid-South. Every spike was followed by a corresponding increase in gang-related firearms seizures across Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas. He was not just supplying one network, he was supplying multiple networks, running an entire distribution operation under the cover of legitimate military logistics, and he had been doing it for at least 5 years. "This is bigger than us." Thornton reviewed the evidence at the FBI field office, his coffee growing cold in his hands. "We're talking about hundreds of weapons, millions of dollars, customers across state lines. We need someone who was inside." Simone pulled up Blackwell's booking photo. "He knows. He's the only one left who knows." He's not talking. He will, when he realizes Lawson is going to let him take the fall alone. April 18th, the second approach. Simone returned to the federal detention facility where Blackwell was being held pending trial. This time, she brought leverage. The interrogation room was the same. The smell was the same. But Blackwell looked different. Thinner, darker circles under his eyes. The arrogance worn down by 2 weeks in custody. Changed your mind about cooperation? He looked up slowly. Depends on what you're offering. Simone slid a photograph across the table. Lawson's military ID photo. You know him. Blackwell's expression did not change, but his hands went still. Never seen him before. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Lawson, Logistics Command, Fort Campbell, your source inside the military supply chain. She leaned forward. He approached me 2 days ago, told me to drop the investigation, gave me 48 hours to reconsider. Blackwell said nothing. Here's what I think happened. Simone's voice was calm, methodical. Lawson reached out to you 3 years ago through Voss, offered a partnership, military-grade weapons at below-market prices, delivered through channels no one was watching. You built your territory on those weapons, expanded your operation, became the biggest distributor in the region. Still nothing. But then I showed up, and everything started falling apart. She tapped the photograph. Lawson doesn't care about you, Keenan. You're a middleman, expendable. Right now, he's already reaching out to your competitors, offering them the same deal. By the time you go to trial, he'll have replaced you completely. And when the prosecutors offer you a chance to cooperate, he'll make sure you never get to testify. Blackwell's jaw tightened. You think I'm afraid of him? I think you should be. He threatened a federal agent in broad daylight. What do you think he'll do to someone in a jail cell? The silence stretched. Protective custody. Blackwell's voice was barely audible. Federal facility, not state, and I want it in writing before I say another word. Done? He exhaled slowly. Then he started talking. The story Blackwell told took 3 hours. Lawson had been running the operation since 2019. He had contacts at 4 military installations across the Southeast. The weapons moved through a network of shell companies, civilian contractors, and corrupted logistics personnel. A supply chain so complex that no single investigation could unravel it. Voss had been recruited in 2021. His job was coordination, matching stolen inventory with buyers, arranging transfers, handling payments through cryptocurrency accounts that were nearly impossible to trace. Blackwell had been one of many customers. There were others in Atlanta, Birmingham, Little Rock, Nashville, each one paying premium prices for military-grade hardware that no civilian dealer could match. He never met us directly. Blackwell rubbed his wrists where the cuffs had left marks. Always went through intermediaries, burner phones, encrypted apps. But Voss slipped up once, mentioned that the boss was coming to Memphis for an inspection. Said we needed to make sure everything was clean because LM didn't like loose ends. LM? Lawson Marcus. That's what Voss called him when he thought no one was listening. Simone recorded everything. Timestamps, locations, names, account numbers. By the time Blackwell finished, she had enough to justify a full investigation into Lawson's operations. But she also had a problem. He knows I'm coming for him. She reviewed her notes in the FBI conference room after the interview. He gave me 48 hours. That was yesterday, which means the door opened. Agent Thornton stood in the doorway with his phone in his hand and his face pale. We have a situation. Lieutenant Colonel Lawson just submitted emergency leave paperwork. He's flying to Panama City tonight. One-way ticket. Simone was already standing. Get me on that flight. This story is about to take its biggest turn yet. If you haven't subscribed, do it now. You're going to want to see how this ends. The flight to Panama City departed from Nashville International at 9:47 p.m. Simone was not on it. She was waiting at the gate with 2 U.S. Marshals and an arrest warrant signed by a federal judge 43 minutes earlier. Lawson saw them before they saw him. He turned, started walking the other direction, picking up speed, pushing past travelers with their rolling luggage and overpriced coffee. The marshals were faster. Marcus Lawson! The lead marshal caught him near the security checkpoint, one hand on his arm. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to traffic stolen military property, violations of the Arms Export Control Act, and obstruction of justice." Lawson did not struggle. He stood perfectly still, letting the marshal secure his wrists, his eyes fixed on Simone across the crowded terminal. "You have no idea what you've done." His voice was quiet, almost conversational. "The people I work for, they don't forget. They don't forgive, and they have a very long reach. Then they can reach you in federal custody." Simone stepped closer. "You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." They led him away through a service corridor, away from the cameras and the curious travelers. Simone watched until he disappeared through the door. Then she pulled out her phone and sent a message to Colonel Reyes. "Package secured, returning to Memphis for debrief." The reply came within seconds. "Well done, Warrant, but we're not finished yet." April 20th. The network began to collapse. With Lawson in custody and Blackwell cooperating, the dominoes fell quickly. Army CID, now fully looped in after Lawson's arrest, executed search warrants at his home in Kentucky, his office at Fort Campbell, and 3 storage facilities he had rented under shell company names. They found records, hundreds of pages documenting 5 years of weapons theft, names of accomplices at military installations across 5 states, bank accounts in the Caymans, Panama, and Belize. And they found something else, a list. 37 names, law enforcement officers, military personnel, civilian contractors, all of them receiving payments from accounts linked to Lawson's network. Some were facilitators who looked the other way. Others were active participants who helped move stolen property. One name stood out: Captain Lucas Pemberton, Memphis Police Department. 12 payments totaling $43,000 over 3 years. The second IA hearing was held on April 28th, as originally scheduled, but the agenda had changed. Simone sat in the gallery of the administrative hearing room, not as a witness this time, but as an observer. The evidence she had gathered was now in the hands of FBI investigators who had taken over the prosecution. Pemberton sat at the defendant's table with Camille Maddox beside him. His uniform was pressed, his posture was rigid, but his face had the waxy pallor of someone who had not slept in days. The hearing officer, a retired judge named Harold Whitman, reviewed the charges. "Captain Pemberton, you are accused of accepting payments from individuals connected to organized criminal activity, of coordinating surveillance operations targeting a federal agent without authorization, of obstructing official investigations, and of conduct unbecoming an officer." He looked up. "How do you plead?" Maddox stood. "Not guilty on all counts, Your Honor. My client—" "Sit down, Camille." Everyone turned. Pemberton's voice was flat, dead. "I said sit down." Maddox stared at him. "Lucas, we discussed—" "I'm done discussing." He looked at the hearing officer. "I plead guilty, to all of it." The room went silent. Whitman leaned forward. "Captain Pemberton, you understand what you're saying? You have the right to contest these charges, to present evidence in your defense, to—" "I understand." Pemberton's hands were shaking now. "I took the money. I helped them. I knew what they were doing, and I looked the other way because the payments were good, and I told myself it didn't hurt anyone." His voice cracked. "I was wrong. I was wrong about all of it, and I'm done pretending otherwise." Maddox gathered her papers and walked out without another word. The sentencing came 3 weeks later. Lucas Pemberton, terminated from Memphis Police Department, pension revoked, referred to federal prosecutors for criminal charges including conspiracy and obstruction, facing 3 to 7 years depending on cooperation. Officer Derek Nash, suspended without pay for 6 months, mandatory retraining, probationary status for 18 months. Officer Tanya Reeves, written reprimand, reassigned to administrative duties. The Memphis Police Department issued a statement expressing deep concern about the conduct revealed by the investigation. They announced a comprehensive review of internal procedures and committed to implementing body camera requirements, pending budget approval. The union issued a counter-statement calling the investigation politically motivated. They promised to support appeals for Nash and Reeves, partial victories, incomplete justice, the system protecting itself even as it punished a few of its worst offenders. Simone had expected nothing more. May 15th. Garrett Voss's court-martial convened at Naval Support Activity Mid-South. The military justice system moved faster than its civilian counterpart. Voss had been stripped of rank immediately upon arrest. His security clearances revoked. His access to base facilities terminated. He sat at the defense table in civilian clothes, the first time most of his former colleagues had seen him without a uniform. The transformation was jarring. Without the symbols of authority, he looked smaller, ordinary. The charges were read: theft of government property, conspiracy to traffic military weapons, violations of the Arms Export Control Act, conduct unbecoming a non-commissioned officer. The evidence was overwhelming: audio recordings, email intercepts, financial records, testimony from Blackwell, Mercer, and 2 other cooperating witnesses. Voss did not testify in his own defense. The panel deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Sentence: 12 years confinement at Fort Leavenworth. Dishonorable discharge, forfeiture of all pay and allowances, reduction to E1. As the MPs led him out of the courtroom, Voss looked back at Simone. His expression was unreadable. Then he turned and walked through the door. She would not see him again for a very long time. May 28th. The civil rights complaint moved forward. Simone had filed under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983 against the Memphis Police Department, Captain Pemberton, Officer Nash, and Officer Reeves. The complaint alleged systematic harassment, discriminatory enforcement, and violation of her constitutional rights. The city's lawyers immediately moved to dismiss. They argued qualified immunity, the legal doctrine that protected government officials from civil liability unless they violated clearly established rights. Judge Patricia Chen was not impressed. The conduct alleged in this complaint is not ambiguous. She reviewed the filing from the bench. Coordinated surveillance without authorization, fabricated complaints used to justify harassment, 47-minute response times for violent crimes, while the plaintiff was simultaneously under constant police observation. She looked at the city's attorney. If these allegations are proven, qualified immunity does not apply. Motion to dismiss denied. The case would proceed to discovery. The city would be required to produce internal communications, personnel records, and training materials related to the officers involved. It would take months, maybe years, but the door was open. June. The DOJ announced its preliminary findings. The investigation into Memphis Police Department traffic enforcement practices had found significant disparities in how officers treated residents based on race and neighborhood. Black drivers were stopped at 3 times the rate of white drivers. Complaints from predominantly black neighborhoods received slower response times. Internal review procedures were inadequate to identify and address patterns of misconduct. The findings were preliminary. A consent decree, federal oversight requiring mandatory reforms, was under consideration. Translation: the government was watching. Whether it would act remained to be seen. We're in the final stretch now. If this story has meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And make sure you're subscribed for our next story. It's going to be even more intense. July 12th, 3 months after the arrests. Simone sat in her new office at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, reviewing the final status reports on Operation Shelby Sweep. The numbers told a story of partial victory. Federal prosecutions. Blackwell awaiting trial, scheduled for October. Voss serving his sentence. Mercer cooperating, facing reduced time. Lawson's case still building as investigators unraveled his 5-year operation. State prosecutions. Malcolm Stroud's trial, pending for November. 3 other associates charged with lesser offenses. Administrative actions. Pemberton terminated and facing criminal charges. Nash and Reeves disciplined but still employed. 4 other officers under investigation. Systemic changes. DOJ inquiry ongoing. Consent decree possible but not guaranteed. Policy reforms announced but not yet implemented, and the open threads. The missing 12 minutes of body cam footage from the night of the home invasion. Technical analysis confirmed manual deletion. Someone had deliberately erased those minutes from the record. The investigation into who had access and motive was ongoing. The payments to Pemberton accounted for only part of Lawson's law enforcement corruption fund. Other names on the list were still being investigated. Some were in other states. Others had retired or resigned before they could be questioned. The network's customer base extended beyond Blackwell. Arrests in Atlanta and Nashville had disrupted some operations. Others continued, adapting to the new landscape, finding new suppliers. Simone closed the file. 3 months of work, dozens of arrests, millions of dollars in seized assets, and the system had changed. A little. Slowly, incompletely. That was how it always went. That evening, she called her mother. The phone rang 4 times before Ruth Garrett answered, her voice carrying the warmth of Georgia summers and Sunday dinners that Simone had missed for too many years. "Baby girl, I was starting to think you forgot my number." "I could never forget, Mama." 3 months without a call. You know what that does to a mother's heart? Simone closed her eyes. "I know, I'm sorry. Work is always something." Ruth's voice softened. "Are you safe?" "I'm safe. You always say that, even when you're not." The silence stretched between them, filled with all the things Simone could not say, the missions she could not discuss, the dangers she could not explain, the life she had chosen that kept pulling her away from everyone she loved. "This time I mean it, Mama. The case is closed. The bad guys are in custody. I'm sitting in an office in Ohio reading paperwork." "Ohio?" Ruth made a sound that was half laugh, half sigh. "My daughter, the world traveler. Ohio. It's temporary. It's always temporary with you." A pause. "When are you coming home?" Simone looked at the new assignment notification on her desk. Tucson Field Office. Operation Desert Mirror. Long-term undercover. "Soon, I promise." "You said that last Christmas, and the Christmas before." "I know. Your father's grave needs tending. I can't do it alone forever." The words hit harder than any threat she had faced in Memphis. Her father had died 4 years ago. Heart attack, sudden and swift. She had been in Afghanistan when it happened, had not made it home for the funeral. "I'll come, Mama. As soon as this next assignment is done, I'll come home and we'll tend the grave together. I promise." Ruth was quiet for a long moment. "I believe you, baby. I just hope I'm still around to see it." The call ended a few minutes later. Simone sat in her office watching the sun set through the window, feeling the weight of promises she was not sure she could keep. July 14th. The new assignment arrived. The email from Colonel Reyes was brief and formal. To S.A. Simone Garrett. From Colonel Diana Reyes, AFOSI Region 4. Subject: New tasking report to Tucson Field Office by July 20th. Briefing on Operation Desert Mirror, long-term undercover. Details compartmented. Travel orders attached. Another city. Another cover identity. Another network to infiltrate. The cycle continued. Simone read the email twice. Then she began packing. July 15th. The evidence review. Before leaving Ohio, Simone spent her final day reviewing the Shelby sweep files one last time, looking for loose ends, unanswered questions, anything that might surface later. The LM thread was closed. Lawson was in custody, his network exposed, his accomplices being rounded up across multiple states. The Pemberton thread was closed, criminal prosecution pending, his career destroyed, his freedom measured in months rather than years. The Voss thread was closed, 12 years at Leavenworth, dishonorable discharge, everything he had built turned to ash. But one thread remained stubbornly open, the missing body cam footage. Simone pulled up the technical analysis report for the 20th time. Subject: Unit 47 body cam footage, March 30th, 2024. Gap identified, 22:03:14 to 22:15:47. Duration, 12 minutes 33 seconds. Technical assessment. Manual deactivation confirmed. Deletion executed from department server terminal. Access log. Terminal accessed at 23:47:22, March 30th, 2024. User credentials. Conclusion. Footage intentionally deleted. Recovery not possible. The redacted username bothered her. The report indicated that someone with administrative access had logged into the server less than 2 hours after the home invasion and deleted specific footage from Nash's body cam. Nash did not have administrative access. Pemberton had been suspended by then. His credentials should have been deactivated. So who had logged in? She sent a query to the FBI team handling the ongoing investigation. The response came back within an hour. Credentials traced to Sergeant William Holloway, IT Division, Memphis PD, currently on medical leave, not responding to interview requests. Address. A Simone stared at the name. Holloway had not appeared anywhere else in the investigation, not in Lawson's payment records, not in Blackwell's testimony, not in any of the intercepted communications. Either he was innocent, an IT sergeant who happened to delete footage at exactly the wrong time for exactly the wrong reasons, or he was a ghost, someone smart enough to stay off every list while enabling the network's operations from the inside. She forwarded the information to Agent Thornton with a note.
This needs follow-up. Holloway might be the link we're missing. I'm deploying to Tucson. Can you take lead? The reply came an hour later. On it. Stay safe warrant and thanks for everything. July 19th, final night in Ohio. Simone finished packing at 7 p.m. The apartment she had been using was bare now. Generic furniture, empty refrigerator, no personal items to suggest anyone had lived there. That was the nature of the work. You moved through places without leaving marks, became people without becoming attached, lived lives that were not your own until the mission ended and you moved to the next one. She was checking the closets for anything left behind when her phone rang. Unknown number, encrypted signal. She answered. Agent Garrett. The voice was male, digitally distorted, impossible to identify. Impressive work in Memphis. Who is this? Someone who's been watching. Someone who thinks you're exactly what we need for a bigger operation. A pause. Much bigger than Blackwell. Much deeper than Voss. Much more dangerous than Lawson. Simone moved to the window, scanned the parking lot below. Empty. I don't take assignments from anonymous callers. This isn't an assignment, it's an invitation. The voice remained calm, almost pleasant. There's a network you haven't found yet. One that makes Lawson's operation look like a street corner hustle. They move weapons, yes, but also information, personnel, influence. They have people in places you can't imagine. If you have evidence of criminal activity, contact the FBI. The FBI has people too. The voice dropped lower. So does AFOSI. So does every agency you might think to trust. That's why we're calling you directly. Because you've proven you can operate outside the system when the system is compromised. Simone's grip tightened on the phone. What do you want? For now, just for you to listen, to watch, to pay attention to things that don't quite add up. A pause. You'll be in Tucson by next week. Operation Desert Mirror. Border security, weapons smuggling, cartel connections, standard assignment. How do you know about... But there's something else happening in Tucson, something that connects to what you uncovered in Memphis. When you see it, you'll understand. The voice smiled. She could hear it. We'll be in touch. Sleep well, warrant. The call ended. Simone stood in the empty apartment, her phone silent in her hand. Warrant, her call sign, the one only her team was supposed to know. Someone inside the system was watching her, tracking her movements, reading her communications. Someone who knew about Tucson before she had even arrived. She checked the call log. The number was already gone, erased from her device as if it had never existed. July 20th, Tucson. The flight landed at 2:14 p.m. local time. Dry heat hit her the moment she stepped off the plane, the kind of heat that pulled moisture from skin and left dust in its place. A driver met her at arrivals. Young, earnest, Air Force enlisted. He did not ask questions about her assignment, just loaded her bags and drove her to the field office in silence. The Tucson AFOSI facility was smaller than the ones she was used to, a converted office building on the outskirts of Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. The briefing room held 6 chairs and a projection screen. The coffee was weak. Colonel Reyes was there via video conference. So was a man Simone did not recognize. Civilian clothes, salt and pepper hair, the bearing of someone who had spent decades in intelligence work. Agent Garrett. Reyes's voice was formal, professional. This is Director Evans from the Intelligence Community Coordination Office. He'll be overseeing the interagency aspects of your assignment. Evans nodded. What do you know about the Sonora Corridor? Primary smuggling route for cartel operations. Weapons, drugs, people. Everything moves through there. Correct. What you don't know is that for the past 18 months, we've detected a new pattern. Military-grade weapons appearing in cartel hands. Not the usual semi-automatic conversions or black market purchases. Factory-fresh hardware with serial numbers traced back to U.S. military inventory. Simone felt the chill despite the desert heat. Another Lawson, possibly the same network with different personnel. Evans pulled up a map on the screen. Lawson was southeastern region. This operation is southwestern. But the methods are similar, the financial patterns are similar, and some of the shell companies overlap. You think they're connected. We think there's something bigger than either operation alone. A national network, possibly international, moving military weapons to hostile actors. Evans paused. Your work in Memphis got their attention. You disrupted a major node. Now they're scrambling, and when they scramble, they make mistakes. Reyes leaned forward. Your cover will be similar to Memphis, civilian contractor, this time with a logistics company that handles base supplies. You'll have access to shipping manifests, personnel records, transportation schedules. If someone is moving weapons through legitimate channels, you'll find the trail. Simone absorbed the information, processed, calculated. How long? Minimum 6 months, possibly longer, depending on what you find. 6 months, another identity, another city. Another network to expose. Understood. Reyes nodded. Report to your cover position tomorrow at 0800. Initial surveillance targets are in the briefing packet. Questions? 1. Simone looked at Evans. The anonymous caller last night. Was that you? The room went still. Reyes's expression sharpened. What anonymous caller? Someone contacted me at 2100 hours using an encrypted channel. Knew my call sign. Knew about this assignment, warned me there was a larger network, one with compromised personnel inside federal agencies. Evans exchanged a look with Reyes. That wasn't us. His voice was careful. We don't make anonymous calls to agents in the field. Then someone else knows I'm here, someone who wanted me to know they're watching. The silence stretched. We'll look into it. Reyes's voice was tight. In the meantime, proceed with the assignment as planned. Standard security protocols. Report anything unusual through secure channels only. And if the caller contacts me again, document everything, but don't engage unless absolutely necessary. Reyes paused. Whoever they are, they're either trying to help or trying to compromise you. Until we know which, treat them as hostile. The briefing ended. Simone gathered her materials and walked out into the Arizona sun. Somewhere in the network of agencies and operations and classified programs, someone was watching her. Someone who knew things they should not know. Someone who wanted her to find something in Tucson. She did not know if they were friend or enemy. Did not know if their warning was genuine or a manipulation. But she knew one thing. The work was not finished. Would never be finished. The systems that protected criminals would always exist. The networks that moved weapons and drugs and bodies would always adapt. The people who profited from corruption would always find new ways to hide, and as long as they existed, there would be people like her. People who went into the darkness because someone had to. People who wore masks and built covers and lived lies in service of truth. People who refused to stop fighting, no matter how many battles they won or lost. Simone Garrett walked to her rental car under the merciless desert sun. Tomorrow, a new mission would begin, and somewhere, watching through cameras and intercepts and channels she could not trace, the unknown caller waited for her to find what they had hidden. 6 months later, the Sonora Corridor investigation had produced results. 3 arrests, 2 tons of seized weapons, a cartel distribution cell dismantled, but the larger network remained elusive, always one step ahead, always disappearing before the raids arrived. And the anonymous caller had not contacted her again. Until today. Simone was driving through the Arizona desert at sunset when her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown source. 3 words. Look behind Holloway. She pulled over. Read the message again. Holloway. The IT sergeant from Memphis, the one who had deleted the body cam footage. Thornton had been investigating him for months, but the trail had gone cold when Holloway died in a car accident in September. Officially, it was an accident. Single vehicle, rural road, no witnesses. Unofficially, someone had cut his brake lines. What was behind Holloway? Simone typed a response. "Who are you?" The reply came immediately. "Someone who lost people to this network. Someone who wants it destroyed. Someone who thinks you're the only one who can do it." Another pause. Then, "There's a storage unit in Memphis. Holloway rented it under a false name. Unit 247, secure store on Lamar Avenue. The contents will change everything you think you know about who's really running this operation. But be careful, Agent Garrett. They're watching you too. And they don't make the same mistake twice." The message disappeared. The phone number vanished. Simone sat in her car as the desert sky turned from orange to purple to black. Memphis, where it all began, where the first threads had unraveled. Whatever was in that storage unit, it was connected to everything. Lawson, Voss, Blackwell, the national network, the anonymous caller, the conspiracy that reached into agencies she was supposed to trust. She had a choice: follow the new lead and risk exposing herself to whoever was watching, or report it through official channels and watch it disappear into bureaucratic limbo while the network continued to operate. She had been here before, in Memphis, facing the same choice. She had chosen to act then. She would choose to act now. Simone started the car and pulled back onto the highway, heading east. Memphis was a 17-hour drive. She would be there by morning. The storage unit was exactly where the caller had said it would be. Secure store on Lamar Avenue. A climate-controlled facility with security cameras that had been disabled for maintenance, according to the apologetic manager. Unit 247. Simone cut the lock with bolt cutters she had purchased at a hardware store an hour earlier. The door rolled up. Inside, file boxes, dozens of them, labeled by date, by location, by operation name. And in the center, on a metal table that had been placed there recently, a single manila envelope. She opened it, photographs, communications intercepts, financial records, and an organizational chart. The network was larger than she had imagined. Not dozens of people, hundreds, not 5 years of operation, 20, not just weapons, everything. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking, money laundering, influence operations. And at the top of the chart, a name she recognized. Not a stranger, not a distant figure. Someone she had met, someone she had trusted. Someone who had signed off on her operations and reviewed her reports and told her she was doing important work. Someone who had been playing both sides for 2 decades while the body count grew. Simone stared at the chart, at the name, at the connections that suddenly made terrible sense. Then she pulled out her phone and called the only person she was certain she could trust. "Thornton, I need you in Memphis, now. I found something. And when you see it, everything is going to change." The end. But every ending is also a beginning. In Tucson, the investigation continues. In Memphis, the storage unit holds secrets that will shake the foundations of federal law enforcement. And somewhere, watching through channels that cannot be traced, the anonymous caller waits. Waits to see what Simone Garrett will do with the truth. Waits to see if she's strong enough to bring down the network. Waits to see if anyone can be trusted. The hunt continues. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Our next story features a federal judge who gets pulled over by a small-town sheriff. And what happens next will leave you speechless. Thank you for watching. Stay safe out there. The name on the organizational chart was Director Raymond Solis, Deputy Director of the Intelligence Community Coordination Office, 23 years of federal service, 3 presidential commendations. The man who had briefed her in Tucson 6 months ago, sitting calmly in that video conference while explaining the scope of the network she was supposed to dismantle. The man who had been running that network from the beginning. Simone stood in the storage unit surrounded by 20 years of evidence, financial records, communication intercepts, operational logs, and felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Solis had overseen interagency operations for a decade. He had access to classified programs across every major law enforcement and intelligence organization. He knew which investigations were gaining traction, which agents were getting close, which operations needed to be redirected or quietly shut down. He had been the perfect mole, hidden in plain sight at the highest levels of the system, designed to catch people like him. And he had sent her to Tucson, knowing exactly what she would find, and what she would not. Agent Thornton arrived in Memphis 14 hours later. He looked like he had not slept since her call. Stubble on his jaw, coffee stains on his shirt, the exhausted alertness of someone running on adrenaline and duty. "Show me." Simone led him into the storage unit, watched his face as he processed the scope of what Holloway had collected. How long was Holloway gathering this? Based on the dates, at least 3 years, maybe longer. She pointed to the organizational chart. He was building a case, documenting everything, waiting for the right moment to come forward. And someone killed him before he could. Cut his brake lines, made it look like an accident. Simone pulled out a file from one of the boxes. But he was smart. He didn't keep everything in one place. This unit was his backup, insurance. Thornton studied the chart. His expression darkened when he reached the name at the top. Solis, Raymond Solis. He exhaled slowly. "I've met him 3 times. He signed off on my promotion to field supervisor. He's been signing off on a lot of things, including the operations that were supposed to catch people like him. The implications hung in the air between them. If Solis was compromised, then every investigation he had touched was potentially tainted. Every operation he had overseen might have been deliberately misdirected. Every agent who had reported to him might have unknowingly fed information straight to the network they were trying to destroy, including Simone, including Thornton, including everyone who had worked on Memphis and Tucson and a dozen other operations over the past decade. We need to take this to someone outside his chain of command. Thornton was already thinking tactically. DOJ Inspector General, FBI Director directly, someone who can move fast before he realizes we're onto him. The anonymous caller knew. Simone pulled out her phone, showed him the message. "They've been tracking this longer than we have, feeding me breadcrumbs, leading me here." "Who are they?" "I don't know, but they wanted Solis exposed. They wanted someone to find this evidence." She looked around the storage unit. "The question is why? What's their angle?" Thornton shook his head. "We can figure that out later. Right now, we need to secure this evidence and get it to people who can act on it." They spent the next 6 hours photographing every document, creating digital backups, establishing chain of custody. At 4:17 a.m., Simone placed a call to the one person she was certain existed outside Solis's sphere of influence. Inspector General Catherine Marsh had built her career on investigating corruption within federal agencies. She had taken down 2 FBI field directors, a DEA regional commander, and a sitting congressman. She answered to no one except the Attorney General, and she had a reputation for being utterly incorruptible. The phone rang 3 times. "Inspector General Marsh." "Ma'am, this is Special Agent Simone Garrett, AFOSI. I have evidence of a high-level compromise within the Intelligence Community Coordination Office. The subject is Deputy Director Raymond Solis." Silence on the line. Then, "Agent Garrett, I know who you are. Memphis, Tucson, you've been busy." "Yes, ma'am. And you're calling me at 4 in the morning because you don't trust your own chain of command." "I'm calling you because the evidence suggests my chain of command may be compromised. I need someone outside the network to evaluate what I've found." Another pause. Simone could hear Marsh thinking, calculating risks, assessing credibility, weighing the implications of what she was being told. "Where are you?" "Memphis, secure store facility on Lamar Avenue, Unit 247. Don't move, don't contact anyone else. I'll have a team there by 0800. A pause. "And Agent Garrett, if this is what you say it is, you've just painted a very large target on your back. Watch yourself." The call ended. Simone looked at Thornton. "Now we wait." If you've made it this far, you need to subscribe. The next few minutes are going to change everything. Inspector General Marsh arrived at 7:52 a.m. with a team of 6 investigators and 2 armed security officers. She was smaller than Simone had expected, 5'4", silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. reading glasses perched on her nose. But her presence filled the storage unit. When she spoke, everyone listened. "Walk me through it," Simone did, starting with Memphis. The threats, the harassment, the arrests, the discovery of Lawson, the connection to Voss, the anonymous caller who had led her to Tucson, and finally, Holloway's evidence. The documentation of a network that stretched across 2 decades and dozens of federal operations. Marsh listened without interrupting. Her investigators photographed documents, tagged evidence boxes, and began the process of creating a formal chain of custody. When Simone finished, Marsh removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. "Do you understand what you're alleging?" "Yes, ma'am." "You're saying that a deputy director of ICCO has been running a criminal network for 20 years, that he's compromised investigations across multiple agencies, that he's directly or indirectly responsible for the deaths of federal personnel and civilians, and that the evidence of all this was collected by a dead IT sergeant who was murdered to prevent its disclosure." "That's correct." Marsh put her glasses back on. "Then we have a lot of work to do." The investigation took 4 months. Marsh's team worked in complete secrecy, a compartmented operation known only to the Attorney General and a handful of trusted personnel. They verified Holloway's evidence against independent records. They traced financial flows through the network of shell companies. They identified the chain of corruption that led from street-level criminals like Keenan Blackwell all the way to the office of Raymond Solis. The picture that emerged was worse than anyone had imagined. Solis had been recruited by a foreign intelligence service in 2004. His handlers had recognized his potential. A mid-level bureaucrat with ambitions and access. They had cultivated him slowly, offering money and influence in exchange for information and protection. By 2010, he had risen to a position where he could actively shape operations. He began steering investigations away from networks that served his handlers' interests. He ensured that certain criminals were never caught, certain weapons were never recovered, certain trafficking routes were never disrupted. The weapons that ended up in cartel hands, the drugs that flowed across borders, the people who disappeared into trafficking networks, all of it facilitated by a man who sat in meetings about national security and nodded along while discussing how to stop the very crimes he was enabling. And when investigators got too close, when people like Holloway started asking questions, Solis made them disappear. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning in March. Solis was at his desk in the ICCO headquarters when the FBI agents arrived. Marsh had insisted on executing the warrant personally. "Raymond Solis, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit espionage, conspiracy to traffic weapons, obstruction of justice, and accessory to murder." Solis looked up from his computer. His expression did not change. "I want my lawyer." "You'll have one. But first, you're going to be processed." Marsh nodded to the agents. "Take him." They led him out through the main entrance, past the colleagues he had worked with for years, past the security guards who had greeted him every morning, past the flags and the official portraits and all the symbols of the government he had betrayed. The cameras were waiting outside. Someone had leaked the timing of the arrest. Simone suspected Marsh herself, who understood the value of public accountability. The footage would play on every news channel for the next week. Raymond Solis, deputy director, being escorted to a waiting vehicle in handcuffs. The face of corruption exposed. The trial began in September. Federal prosecutors presented evidence for 6 weeks, financial records, communication intercepts, testimony from cooperating witnesses, including members of Solis's own network who had agreed to testify in exchange for reduced sentences, and testimony from Simone Garrett. She sat on the witness stand for 3 days, walking the jury through the investigation: Memphis, Tucson, the anonymous caller, Holloway's storage unit, the connections that linked street-level crime to the highest levels of federal authority. The defense tried to discredit her, suggested she was a rogue agent pursuing a vendetta, claimed the evidence had been fabricated or manipulated. The jury did not believe them. Guilty on all counts. Sentence: life without parole plus 40 years. No possibility of early release. Assets seized under federal forfeiture provisions. Pension revoked. Security clearances permanently terminated. Raymond Solis would die in a federal prison cell. But the network did not die with him.
That was the reality Simone faced in the months after the trial. Solis had been the American head of an operation that spanned continents. His handlers, the foreign intelligence officers who had recruited and directed him, remained at large. The infrastructure he had built continued to function, adapting to his absence, finding new routes and new personnel. The arrests continued. Lawson received an additional 20 years after his connection to Solis was established. 3 other military officers were identified and charged. A dozen law enforcement personnel across 5 states faced prosecution for their roles in the network. But for every person caught, others remained free. The system protected itself. The network survived. Partial justice. Incomplete victory. The pattern that defined every operation Simone had ever worked. 1 year after the Memphis arrests, Simone stood at her father's grave in a small cemetery outside Atlanta. The Georgia sun was warm on her shoulders. Her mother stood beside her, holding flowers they had bought that morning. "He would be proud of you." Ruth Garrett's voice was quiet. "He always was." "I know, Mama. He used to say you had a gift for seeing what others missed, for finding truth where other people only saw confusion." Ruth placed the flowers on the headstone. "He knew you would do important things." Simone did not respond. She was thinking about the cost of important things, the years away from home, the relationships sacrificed, the pieces of herself she had left scattered across operations and cover identities and missions that could never be discussed. She had brought down a network, exposed corruption at the highest levels, put criminals behind bars who had operated with impunity for decades. And she was still alone, still moving from city to city, still wearing masks and building covers and living lives that were not her own. "Come home, baby." Ruth took her hand. "Just for a while. Rest. Remember who you are when you're not chasing monsters." Simone squeezed her mother's hand. "Soon, Mama, I promise." This time, she meant it. 2 weeks later, she submitted her request for leave. Colonel Reyes approved it without hesitation. "You've earned it. Take whatever time you need." Simone packed a single bag, drove to her mother's house in the Atlanta suburbs, slept in her childhood bedroom for the first time in 15 years. The first week was difficult. She woke at every sound, reached for weapons that were not there, scanned every room for threats that did not exist. The habits of operational life did not disappear just because she had left the field, but slowly she began to relax, began to remember what it felt like to have dinner with family, to attend church on Sunday, to sit on the porch and watch the sunset without calculating sight lines and exit routes. Her mother did not ask about her work, did not press for details about the headlines that had mentioned her name without showing her face, just welcomed her home and fed her and let her heal. We're almost at the end now. If this story has meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Dowards. 1 month into her leave, the phone call came. Not from the anonymous caller, not from Thornton or Marsh or Reyes, from Agent Marcus Thornton's widow. "Agent Garrett," the woman's voice was thick with grief. "My name is Patricia Thornton. Marcus was my husband." Simone's blood went cold. "Was? He's dead 3 days ago. The official report says it was a car accident." A pause. "But I found something in his office, a note with your name on it." Simone was on a plane within 2 hours. Patricia Thornton lived in a modest house in suburban Virginia. She was in her early 40s, with red-rimmed eyes and the hollowed-out expression of someone who had not slept since receiving the worst news of her life. "He talked about you." Patricia led her into the study where Thornton had worked, said you were the best agent he'd ever partnered with, said you saw things other people missed. "What happened?" "They say he lost control on a curve, single vehicle accident, no witnesses." Patricia's voice hardened. "But Marcus drove that road every day for 12 years. He knew every curve, every pothole. He didn't just lose control." She handed Simone a sealed envelope. "I found this in his desk drawer, hidden under a false bottom. My name was on the outside, but the contents were addressed to you." Simone opened the envelope. Inside, a single sheet of paper covered in Thornton's handwriting, and a USB drive. "Garrett, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. The investigation isn't over.
Solus was a node, not the root. There's someone else, someone higher, someone who's been running operations that make Solus look like a small timer. I found a thread, following it. But I think they've noticed. If I don't come back, the drive has everything I've gathered so far. Trust no one in the official channels. They're all compromised. Find the architect. That's what they call him. The one who designed the whole system. He's still out there, and he's not going to stop. Watch your back. Thornton Simone read the note twice. Then she looked at the USB drive in her hand. The network had killed Thornton because he had found something. Something that pointed to whoever was behind Solus, behind Lawson, behind 20 years of corruption and death. The architect. Another layer, another name, another phantom at the top of a pyramid that seemed to have no end. Simone returned to Atlanta that night. She did not tell her mother what had happened, did not explain why she spent the next 3 days locked in her childhood bedroom, reviewing the contents of Thornton's drive on a secure laptop she had brought from storage. The files were fragmentary, incomplete. Thornton had been in the early stages of building a case when he was killed, but the pieces he had gathered painted a terrifying picture. The architect was not American, was not affiliated with any single government or organization, was something new, a broker who sat at the intersection of criminal networks, intelligence services, and corporate interests. Someone who facilitated connections across borders and ideologies, who moved assets and information and influence according to a logic that served only his own purposes. Solus had been one of his assets, Lawson another, Blackwell, Voss, Pemberton, all of them pieces on a board controlled by someone they had never met, and that someone was still operating, still placing pieces, still running games that spanned continents and claimed lives, including Thornton's life. On the fourth day, Simone made a decision. She called Colonel Reyes. "I'm coming back. I need to be reactivated. Your leave isn't over for another 2 months. I know, but there's something I need to finish." She paused. "Thornton is dead, officially an accident, but I have evidence that suggests otherwise. Evidence that points to someone above Solus, someone who's still active." The line was silent for a long moment. "Come to Wright-Patterson. We'll talk." The briefing took place in a secure facility beneath the main AFOSI building. Simone presented Thornton's files, the fragmentary evidence he had gathered, the pattern that suggested a coordinating intelligence behind the networks they had been dismantling. Reyes listened, asked questions, made notes. When Simone finished, the colonel sat back in her chair. "You're asking me to authorize an investigation into someone we can't identify, based on evidence gathered by a dead agent, pointing to a conspiracy that spans multiple countries and agencies." "Yes, ma'am. An investigation that will put you in direct conflict with forces we don't fully understand. That will make you a target for people who have already demonstrated their willingness to kill." "Yes, ma'am." Reyes studied her for a long moment. "Why?" Simone thought about the question, about all the reasons she could give: duty, justice, the memory of a partner who had died pursuing the truth. But the real answer was simpler: because someone has to, and I'm the one who's still standing. Reyes nodded slowly. "Authorized, but you'll work alone, completely compartmented, no official channels, no backup that can be traced. If you're caught, we'll deny any connection." "Understood." "And Simone," Reyes leaned forward, "be careful. Whatever this is, it's bigger than anything we've faced before. Don't become another name on their list." 3 months later, Simone sat in a cafe in Vienna, watching the entrance of a building across the street. She had followed Thornton's threads across 4 countries, through financial networks and intelligence databases and whispered conversations in languages she had learned for exactly this purpose. Each piece of evidence led to another. Each connection revealed new layers of the network, and now, finally, she had a face. The man who emerged from the building was unremarkable. Mid-50s, gray suit, the bland anonymity of a European businessman. He walked with the unhurried confidence of someone who had never been caught, never been threatened, never faced consequences for the empires he had built and the lives he had destroyed. The architect. Simone photographed him, documented his movements, began building the case that would eventually bring him down. It would take years, maybe decades. The network he had built was vast, resilient, designed to survive the loss of any single node. Bringing him to justice would require resources and cooperation that she could not yet secure. But she had time, and patience, and the memory of everyone who had died. Thornton, Holloway, the unnamed victims of 20 years of corruption, driving her forward. She finished her coffee, paid the bill, stepped out into the Vienna morning. The hunt continued. 6 months after Vienna, Simone received a message through channels she had thought were secure. "You're getting closer," he's noticed. "Be careful what you find, Agent Garrett. Some truths are too dangerous to know. But if you're determined to continue, there's something you should see. A facility in Montenegro, coordinates attached. This is where it all began. This is where you'll find the answers you're looking for. Good luck." The message was unsigned, untraceable. But Simone recognized the pattern. The anonymous caller. The one who had led her to Holloway's storage unit. The one who had been watching from the beginning. They were still out there, still feeding her information, still guiding her towards something they wanted exposed. Friend or enemy, asset or manipulator, she did not know. But Montenegro was a lead, and leads were what she needed. The facility was built into the side of a mountain, accessible only by a single road that wound through terrain too rough for any vehicle except specialized military transport. Simone approached on foot. 3 days of hiking through wilderness that would have killed anyone without her training. She carried minimal equipment, water, rations, a weapon, and the tools she would need to document whatever she found. The entrance was hidden, camouflaged so well that she almost missed it even with the coordinates. Inside, a server farm. Rows of machines humming with computational power. Enough storage capacity to hold the records of 1,000 operations. And at the center, a terminal that was still active. Simone approached carefully, checked for traps, found none. The screen displayed a login prompt. She entered the credentials she had extracted from Thornton's files, a username and password he had found in Solis's personal effects. The system accepted them. And suddenly, she was looking at everything. Every operation the architect had ever run, every asset he had ever recruited, every government he had ever compromised, every life he had ever destroyed. 23 years of corruption, documented in meticulous detail, including the names of people still active, still embedded in agencies around the world, still working toward goals that served only the architect's interests. Simone began downloading. Tiestas. The extraction took 4 hours. She copied everything to encrypted drives, created redundant backups, established dead drops in 3 countries where the information would surface if something happened to her. Then she destroyed the servers. Thermite charges placed at critical junctures, the mountain facility would burn, and with it, the architect's primary archive. He would know she had been here, would know she had taken his records, would come for her with everything he had. But now she had leverage. Now she had proof. Now she had the ammunition to bring down an empire that had operated in shadows for more than 2 decades. 1 year later, the prosecutions began. Simone's evidence had been distributed to trusted contacts in 12 countries, simultaneously released to prevent any single government from suppressing it. The coordination had taken months, building relationships, establishing trust, ensuring that the information would be acted upon rather than buried. In the United States, 14 federal employees were arrested. In the United Kingdom, 6. Germany, France, Japan. Every country where the architect had planted assets saw indictments and trials and convictions. The network collapsed, not all at once but in waves. Each arrest led to new evidence. Each trial exposed new connections. Each conviction emboldened other investigators to pursue leads they had previously been too afraid to follow. And at the center of it all, the architect. He was arrested in Singapore, attempting to board a flight to a country without extradition treaties. Interpol had been waiting. They had his photograph, his real name. His fingerprints matched records from crimes committed decades ago under different identities. Alexei Volkov, former intelligence officer, current architect of global corruption. He would spend the rest of his life in prison. Multiple countries had claims on him. Multiple courts would try him for multiple crimes. He would die before all the proceedings were finished. Justice, imperfect, partial, incomplete, but justice nonetheless. Simone watched the footage of his arrest from her mother's living room in Atlanta. Ruth sat beside her, holding her hand. Is it over? Simone considered the question, thought about the networks that remained, the assets who had escaped, the damage that could never be undone. This part is over, but there's always more work. There always is with you. Ruth squeezed her hand. But maybe now you can rest, just for a while. Simone leaned back into the couch, closed her eyes. She thought about Thornton, about Holloway, about all the people who had died trying to expose the truth, about the years of sacrifice and solitude and danger that had brought her to this moment. She thought about the anonymous caller, whoever they were, who had guided her through the darkness towards something that might have remained hidden forever. And she thought about the future, the operation still waiting, the network still operating, the injustices still crying out for someone to fight them. There would always be more work. That was the nature of the calling she had chosen. But for now, in this moment, she could rest. Yeah, Mama. She opened her eyes and smiled. Maybe I can. That night, her phone buzzed with a final message. Well done, Agent Garrett. You found what we needed you to find, exposed what we needed exposed, changed what we needed changed. The world is a little better today because of you, a little safer, a little more just. We'll be watching, always. And when the next threat emerges, when the next network rises, we'll be in touch. Until then, rest well. You've earned it. The message disappeared as she read it. The number untraceable. Simone set the phone down and looked out the window at the Georgia night. Somewhere out there, the anonymous watchers continued their work, monitoring threats, gathering intelligence, waiting for the moment when they would need someone like her again. And when that moment came, she would be ready. But tonight, she was home, with her mother, in the house where she had grown up. Tonight, she was not an agent, not an operative, not a hunter of shadows and secrets. Tonight, she was just Simone, and that was enough.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. If you found the content helpful, please remember to like and subscribe so you won't miss our upcoming episodes. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. We are always here to listen.